appreciate you guys being on here. Just want to first off say that, very strange and unique time. Certainly, thoughts and prayers are for everyone who's, being affected by this health-wise and loved ones. It's been a unique time for our staff and for our players for sure. But I first off want to just say that I think, Governor DeWine and President Drake and Gene Smith have really done an excellent job so far of getting out in front of this, communicating, and just handling this, the right way. And so, with their lead, we've been doing the best we can to follow the protocol, with our players. Anybody who was in the dorms is now at home for the most part. There are a few guys who are in the dorms still, but the majority of everybody is at home. There are a few guys who are living, at their apartments locally. But as of now, all organized activities and everything at the Woody has been shut down. And really, at this point, guys are just kind of at their house. We had our first week of academics, and all of our stuff has been moved online or virtual. So, our staff has been doing a great job. Our administration's been doing an excellent job in terms of communicating with everybody. I think the student athletes are doing a really good job communicating as well. They kind of live in a world right now of technology, and so I think make sure that we have constant interaction with them, but then also their families. They're home, and it's very different, kind of a unique norm. And so we're taking one day at a time. We're not sure what the future brings, and each week kind of unveils something new that might be coming down the road. And so we're just going to keep doing the best we can, and we just tell staff that the number one thing is taking care of their health, of them and their family, and then secondly, just communicating the best we can with our players and try to help them navigate through these times. With that, Jerry, we'll just kind of start with any questions.
Okay, sounds real good. Thanks so much, Coach. We're going to open it up with Dave Biddle from 24/7 Sports with Nathan Baird on deck. Dave, go ahead.
Hi, Ron. First of all, thank you for doing this, Coach. You guys are having an amazing recruiting run, regardless of the circumstances. I mean, just at any point in time, this would be amazing. But given that we're in a quarantine right now, how do you explain just how well you guys are doing on the recruiting front?
Well, I think recruiting is sped up. I thought we did a great job in a tough spot this winter. We lost that 1 week in December because of the championship game, and then we're getting ready for the bowl game, and we're really only out 1 week. And then typically in January you have more than just 2 weeks on the road. I thought we maximized our time really well, but also got ahead of this thing. Even in the last year, Mark Pantoni, our staff, has done a great job of staying in touch with this class, from this time last year. And we're working so far ahead that those relationships are really, really strong. And so we're just doing a great job communicating right now. I think there's a lot of excitement around the program and what we're building on both sides of the ball. And again, I just think, we've been doing this for a while now with this class. And so there's been a lot built up. This is not something we just started a few months ago. And so, we're doing the best we can to communicate with these families and using FaceTime and different things to communicate and try to answer their questions the best they can, even though right now they're not able to visit on campus.
And Ryan, just one more thing for me. You guys landed Trey Sermon. Just what is your vision for Trey Sermon in this offense, and when do you expect he'll be medically cleared?
So I actually can't comment on anything like that because, he's a recruit. So unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on any of that stuff. And the NCAA rule right now put a stop on even signing financial aid agreements right now. And so until that ceases and passes, I'm not able to comment on any of that stuff.
Thank you, Coach.
Okay, next up is Nathan Baird from Cleveland.com with David Hale on deck. Nathan?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, for doing this. Can you go into more detail about just what you've communicated to the players about what they should be doing right now, or how your staff is communicating with them about, obviously health and things are the first priority, but then for football-related things, how are you guys overseeing that, holding them accountable? How are they holding each other accountable? Just what's going on there right now?
Yeah, well, we're trying to stay in constant communication. I think in this generation especially, they're just so used to such great feedback. And so we're trying to make sure we give them that feedback and try to help them with all that stuff. Their lives are so structured when they're here that we have to make sure we can do the best we can remotely to give them that structure as well. So this week, obviously, the first concern was academics and making sure that everybody was comfortable with their classes. Some of them are on what we call Zoom, which is like a Skype type of thing where people are doing that. Some of the classes were online. And so through that, we're just trying to help them with that. The football part of it and all that, in terms of working out and everything, it's very individual based. Really, when you look at the different guys we have guys who are in downtown New York City and Brooklyn. We have guys who are, in Hawaii to California to Seattle, all over the country. And so really what we've been doing is just kind of on an individual basis by the position coaches. They've been doing an excellent job of communicating with them. And Coach Maratti's been, able to send a few things out in terms of a lot of times those guys are just really at their house doing body weight things and trying to keep themselves in shape and stay healthy because we worked really hard to get ourselves in shape and ready for spring practice. And so we want to try to maintain that the best we can, given the circumstances.
And specifically with the two freshman quarterbacks, any specific plan that you've given them? Because obviously it was big for them to get on campus for this first semester and kind of get ahead of things.
Yeah. For them, it's unfortunate because, spring practice is so important for a young quarterback. But, they do have access to our film, and we're going to do the best we can to make sure that they have everything they can to study that stuff. And, Corey will make sure that he's giving them everything they need to, try to get ahead on this thing the best they can without actually, spring practice. Now, we're hopeful there's a chance down the road that there are some workouts that we can capture back based on when everybody comes back on campus, but until then, we're not really sure.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, David Hale from ESPN.com with Bill Landis on deck. David?
Hey, Ryan, I appreciate you doing this. I'm just curious, you obviously this is sort of uncharted territory and nobody really knows what comes next, but assuming a season starts on time and you get guys back on campus by midsummer and into August for camp, where do you see the potential biggest ripple effects of all this showing up, whether it's academics or young guys, freshmen getting acclimated or any of those things? Where do you see maybe the biggest kind of long-term impact?
I think, like you said, it's hard to say. I don't think we know yet. But I think a lot of it has to do with, how long the quarantine lasts and what kind of shape our guys can stay in this period, because it's very important that we stay in great shape physically. But, if it gets that far, it wasn't that long ago that, August and they got themselves in shape and, you went through preseason camp and you did everything you can to get them into shape to go play in September. So that model's out there, and it's very different than what's happened over the last 10 to 15 years. But we'll adjust the best we can and try to solve the problems as they come. But I think it's hard to project, like you said, what some of the major issues are going to be until we know how long we're in this.
One of the things that I've kind of heard from a lot of people is that this is probably a situation that will do a very good job of separating the disciplined, mature guys from the perhaps less so. How much of an advantage is it for a team like Ohio State and yourself that you've got, a lot of veterans, particularly at the quarterback position now, and guys who kind of know what it takes to be playing at a high level when you're not there sort of for the day in and day out face-to-face stuff?
Yeah, I think the accountability is at an all-time high in terms of making sure that these guys are doing what they need to do. And like you said, the older guys know what they're supposed to do. The younger guys need a little bit more guidance. But like everyone says, character is really shown when nobody's looking, and this is the ultimate test of that.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, next up, Bill Landis from The Athletic with Dan Hope on deck. Bill?
Hi, Ryan. I know you guys never talk specifically about injuries, but I'm curious about how you're just handling guys who might be hurt, sort of regardless of the severity. Obviously, they can't be there working with your staff in person or in the facility. So how are you guys managing that stuff to get guys recovered in the right way when they're not here?
So if there's guys who are not here and they've gone home, Sean Barnhouse and our athletic training staff have set up arrangements for them to do their rehab back at their home. If they are in town, then they've been using the crane, and the crane has been open for them, and that's where they're going to be doing their rehab right now. That's their location.
And I'm just kind of curious, like if maybe you could give an example, even if it's just with one guy or maybe something you've done, just sort of how you've been trying to teach football or coach football virtually and remotely.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools and there's a lot of things that we can use to try to help with those things. But we are under an 8-hour a week, under CARA, where these guys have to they can do their workouts and those kind of things, but there's a limit to all of that. So our guys check in academically and do those type of meetings. But we do have those tools, and we do have some of the teleconference stuff that we can use as time goes on to help our guys a little bit that way. But it is limited just because of the care hours.
All right, next up is Dan Hope with 11 Warriors with Austin Ward on deck. Dan?
Hey, Ryan, you put out a couple messages on social media about, mental health and sharing those with communities. Obviously, that's something that could affect, your players and your staff at a time like this. Just what have your messages been to your team about making sure that they're taking care of themselves mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, our in sports psychology, we have really two of those, and then also, two other athletic counselors. And they've sent out a bunch of messages just about ways to stay mentally healthy. They've been, they still offer resources for our guys as well. And I think they're doing a great job of being out in front of it and communicating with them through email and making sure that, they understand that those resources are still available to our guys during this time. And also to our staff, really. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a unique time, and, there's a lot at play here. There's obviously the health part of it. There's the financial part of it, which is going to put a burden on a lot of families. And then just being at your home and a new norm. And anytime there's a new norm that kicks in, there's an adjustment period there. And so just trying to be aware of it, trying to bring attention to it, make sure that people are at least conscious of it. I think that's a big part of it. And, family members are talking to each other and obviously for our guys, letting them know that the resources are still here for them.
You mentioned the financial part of it. Obviously, you have a team of guys that come from a lot of different backgrounds, and some guys might have more resources to be able to work out at home than others. Do you and your assistant coaches kind of have to keep that in mind in terms of what you might suggest to each of your players during this time?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that's what I was saying, where everybody's a little bit different. There's not a lot of people who have full gyms at their house, so that's kind of out. But there are some people maybe that would have access to some dumbbells or something like that in their basement, or but then there's other people who don't. And so that's where Mick and our strength and conditioning staff have been doing an excellent job communicating with them and sent them some bands and different things, some body weight stuff, sending them some videos to help them with just how they're going to operate, in their own home, and how they can keep their strength and their weight up. Trying to, even if it's just running down the street or whatever it is, running wise, trying to give them those things based on what they have, because everybody's in a unique situation.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next up, Austin Ward from Lettermen Row with Tony Girdman on deck. Austin?
Thanks, Jerry. Ryan, I realize that none of us know exactly how long this is going to last and when football can resume, but if hypothetically you got to do something like an NFL mini camp or OTAs in the summer, maybe before training camp to get them back, is that a
News Radio 98.3 Mansfield's News?
What was that? Is that a model that you might actually prefer?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the talk, we're all going to get together as Big Ten coaches and athletic directors. There's so many things coming at Gene and our administration right now. Those guys are dealing with things with spring sports and so many other issues. But I already talked to a couple of the Big Ten coaches about their thoughts. I do think that some places have already had 9 practices. There's some that have had more than that, and I think that's a little bit of an unfair advantage. Also, they've had 20-hour work weeks where we only had 1, and they've had several, and so there's a little bit of inequality there. Now, we certainly understand this is a situation that's very unique, and we have to take that into consideration. But once we know, when we're going to kind of get back into this thing, then we'll try to come up with something. And I think one of the models that we need to consider, like you said, is some sort of OSP or OTA, models that were out there in the NFL. But until we kind of know what the parameters are, it's hard to create anything. And maybe it's having 10 guys work together in the building at once, and then they leave and another 10 come in. I'm not sure how that's all going to look, and so it's hard to come up with a model until we know exactly what we're dealing with. But I think there are some things like that out there that are definitely worth the conversation. Yes.
And when you describe sort of the communication with the players, and that being, you want the unit leaders and the assistant coaches to lead that. How many players are you able to communicate with directly? What do you want your role to kind of be if the coaches are leading some of that direct communication?
Yep. So we have two conference calls a week as a staff, and we go through just about every kid and each area: academics, strength and conditioning, football, all those type of things. And then, I try to send out messages as many times as I can, whether it's a video message or a text message. Also, visiting with the leadership committee and making sure that, those guys are doing the best they can to communicate with their units. And we have a group of about, I think it's like 24 of the leadership committee. And so doing the best we can that way. It's kind of hard to rally everybody together when you have 120 some odd players and you're all in different parts of the country, whether it's time zone constrictions or whatever it might be. So we've been doing, I think, a really good job of communicating to the position coaches. But I do the best we can through text message, video, to communicate, a unified message as many times as I can within the week.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next up, Tony Girdman from the Ozone with Kyle Rowland on deck. Tony?
Ryan, thanks for doing this. My question kind of goes along with Austin's. What is your typical day like? When you wake up this morning, how does your day start, and what does it encompass?
Yep. It kind of depends on the day, but for the most part, it's waking up and watching film. Usually use the morning to, try to watch, whether it's our spring cut-ups, study an NFL team, watch an upcoming opponent. It's a great opportunity to just study film. So that's kind of the morning, and then quickly get into recruiting. Try to get as many guys as we can on the phone or find out what's going on in the recruiting world through text message and having those guys call in. Also evaluating film. This is a great opportunity for our staff to spend a lot of time evaluating film, which typically, Mark and his staff do a great job of that. And we get to watch some highlights, but now we're kind of diving into some profile tapes and some game tape, which is really valuable. And then, trying to do the best we can to, just get with our staff and figure out, what's going on, if there's any issues that are going on, communicate with Gene Smith, regularly, communicate with Diana Sabo regularly, Brian Voltolini, Ryan Stamper, just constantly communicating with them throughout the day, trying to figure out where the issues are and where we need to go next. Certainly, probably talk to Mick Marotti, 2 or 3 times a day about everything going on with him and his staff. So a lot of phone calls, a lot of, FaceTiming and a lot of watching film.
And then you mentioned that some players are still in the dorms right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are a few that, we decided that whether it was because of an injury or whatever it was, that they were better off being here on campus in the dorms. And so there are a few guys here who are in the dorms that they went through and filed a waiver and got that done. So they're local.
Thank you.
And that is a university policy, everyone, where students, for whatever reason, if they're from a hot area and couldn't go home, they could waiver to petition to stay in the dorm. So that's a university policy. Up next, Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade with Bill Rabinowitz on deck. Kyle?
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for doing this. You guys had a record number of early enrollees this year, and this spring obviously would have been a pretty important time for them. Just how much concern is there just trying to make up that lost time?
I don't know if it's a concern as much as it is just, disappointing that they weren't able to get those practices under their belt, and hopefully we can recoup those at some point. But it is what it is, and, it's the same for everybody else throughout the country. And good news for us is a lot of our young guys played, especially in those first 10 games. They got a lot of snaps. Some kids over 200, 250, 300 snaps last year. Our quarterback's returning. So I feel like in terms of game readiness, we do have a fairly veteran team. But there are a lot of guys in there. 14 guys who, we're counting on to get a bunch of reps and give us some depth coming into the preseason. So, it is what it is. We're going to do the best we can to try to get those guys up and running. But certainly, an unfortunate situation. But there's bigger things that are ahead of this, and obviously the health of everybody is what we're focused on and making sure everybody's healthy.
For sure. And then a semi non-football question, kind of going off what Tony asked you about your daily life. I don't know, Americans are all talking about, a lot of them find it difficult to work from home, and they're trying to adjust to that. I was just wondering, like, for you personally, is it hard to be doing all this work from your own home?
It helps when the sun's out, I'll tell you that. You can walk outside the house and walk around the yard or the neighborhood a little bit. When it's raining and cold and you're kind of cooped up in the house, not as much fun. But, we're trying to look at it like, how many times as a football coach are you actually this much of an extended period of time with your family? And, trying to make a positive out of a negative, and just in terms of, reconnecting with the family, spending real time with the family. And there's obviously a pandemic going on, and it's stressful for everybody, but trying to do the best we can to keep our minds off of that at night or whenever we have family time.
Thank you.
Up next, Bill Rabinowitz from the Dispatch with Mitch Stacy from the Associated Press on deck. Bill?
Hi, Ryan. Most coaches adhere to the I don't worry about what I can't control guideline. But what level of concern do you have about the season being delayed, shortened, or maybe not even being played at all?
I don't know. I really don't. And for me to comment on it, I would just be, ignorant to really what's real and what isn't. And there's just so many scenarios out there. Like you said, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes. And until we know for sure, I feel like we're kind of wasting energy because we don't know. Certainly it's a concern. That would be awful. But trying not to get that far down the road, trying to just doing a great job with today. And I know that sounds cliche, but until we start to know more, which I'm hoping we do over the next 2 to 3 weeks, at least to forecast it out, it's hard to get that far ahead of ourselves.
In terms of Master Teague, I don't know whether he had surgery, was going to have surgery. Can you update his status right now? And obviously, he's a guy you would definitely want to be able to be monitored closely with Adam Stewart or whoever it be.
Yeah, again, I can't really get into too many details in terms of the medical stuff, but he is local, and which is great, and he's going to rehab and do a great job with that. Tony Alfred's in constant communication with Master, and Master's a very mature young man. He's got his priorities straight. He's going to attack this rehab, and he's going to do the best he can to get back as fast as possible. And he's a little bit of a genetic freak, so we're hopeful that with our team and with his hard work and just the way his genetics are, get a speedy recovery here. But we also don't want to rush it, so there's a fine line there. But he is local, and he's going to do everything he can to get it back.
And just a quick one: nobody in the program has tested positive, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. Now it's that's one of those things where we all know that the testing part of it is taking time and everything like that, but there's nobody in our family right now that we know of that is tested positive.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
Next up is Mitch Stacy from the Associated Press with Heather Dinich from ESPN.com on deck. Mitch?
Hey, Ryan. Hope you and your family are well. And along those lines, and along the lines of the questions that some of the others had about how you're spending your days, do you have a home office at home where you're going in and putting in so many hours and then coming out and having family time? Or how are you breaking it down with all this time at home?
Yeah, so we're trying to get into a routine. Like you said, I do have a little bit of an office that up until this point I've never used, to be honest with you. And so, yeah, the mornings we wake up, have breakfast, and then that's work time for the kids. They have their projects, different things they do, homework. And Nina kind of just goes through that with the kids. They're getting a lot of their stuff online, and that's constantly changing. And then around lunchtime, it's kind of an area we all try to work out, try to get, a run in or, whatever it might be for everybody in the family. We try to keep it that way. And then we get back in the afternoon and they work on their projects and different things. And then I kind of get back to work. So we just kind of broke it up the mornings. There's a session of work, there's lunch and workout in the afternoon, and then back to work, late in the afternoon. But you're always on call. And, with the phone calls and everything else, I mean, it's always right there. And I can't tell you how many times we've sat down as a family to do something and the phone rings and then I'm off and running. So, but yeah, trying to create a routine best we can for the time being.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up, Heather Dinich from ESPN.com with Joey Kaufman on deck. Heather?
Hey, Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. It's Heather. So you talked a lot about some of the things that you guys and your staff are asking the players to do. How are you holding them accountable from afar? I've talked to coaches who are having players send in pictures or videos of workouts, of meals that they are eating. Are they keeping diaries? Can you monitor them by Fitbits? What are you doing to know that these things that you're sending out are not only being received but are being done and they're not just sitting on the couch?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do with that, because of the care hours, and so we're very sensitive to that. But there are different things that we're doing just in terms of communication and accountability. And we have in the messages with our players is that if we have to check on you anyways, or if you say you're doing something and you're really not, then we're not much of a team anyways. So. We have the guidelines. We've set them out. We've talked to them about the different things that are there on a daily basis. Certainly they could not do it, but then we have an awful team if that's the case. And so just constant communication within the position coaches and the units to make sure that they're talking about it and they're doing a great job. I think our family's parents have been excellent. I mean, they're with them every day, and so constant dialogue about how workouts went or whatever that day. But to sit there and say, we're going to monitor them through a Fitbit or something like that on their what they're doing, we're not going to go down that road. There's just too many things that I think are a little dangerous in terms of the care hours and what we're going to hold them accountable to. So we give them things to do. We give them guidelines, and we think that the leaders and the position groups will do a great job of, talking them through and making sure that our guys come back and at least, close to the amount of shape that they were when they left. I know there's going to be a little bit of some time in there. We have to get them back into shape a little bit, but the smaller that gap is, the better off we're going to be.
And to follow up, can you be a little more specific about what exactly you guys are asking of them? Are we talking about an hour workout a day, 3 days a week, 7 days a week? what exactly are you guys asking them to do?
Well, each unit and each position, there's different things, and so like I said, individually, based on where they live, it's different. If somebody has weights and stuff like that, then they're lifting weights. But some people are, there's guys in cities throughout the country that just have their house. So, they kind of have to monitor their routine or adapt their routine a little bit differently. So we're trying to work with them, and it's pretty unique to the individual.
Thanks.
Yep.
Next up, Joey Kaufman from the Dispatch with Doug Lesmerises on deck. Joey? Joey, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute there, guys. Ryan, just from conversations you've had with guys that are scattered across the country, just on a general level, what's like their biggest, I guess, is there a consensus on like what guys are like feeling and worried about, or just what's, I guess, your overall like sense on how guys are doing right now? Like,
I think they're doing pretty good. Yeah, it sounds like, just in the interactions that our coaches are having with our players, they're doing well. That, although it's kind of a strange time, they're handling it well. The communication through in the classes virtually and online isn't as foreign to them as maybe it is to you and I. So they won't be as frustrated as, again, maybe you and I might be. But, I do think they need that interaction, though. And I think that this generation more than ever has gotten a lot more feedback and is used to that feedback. So the interaction is really, really important. And I think the more interaction we give them, the better off they're going to be. We're still only, I guess, a few weeks into it. We had the 2 weeks of spring break, and then this is the third week here. And we have to just make sure that we're staying on top of the communication and that interaction, because I do think there's a void there that they're going to start feeling as time goes on more and more. And we'll just keep trying to address that as time goes on. But I think overall they're doing okay.
And just one follow-up on some of the school stuff. How do you maintain accountability for making sure guys are going to class or virtually and just staying on top of their stuff like that? Because obviously you can't go into a classroom because guys are in attendance.
Yeah, so Sasso, is doing a really good job of that, just on a daily basis, going through and talking to our guys and making sure that they have tutors and they're going to their tutors. And so we're still holding them accountable on a daily basis. And, whether attending the Zoom sessions and virtual classes. And so we're getting daily updates on all those things. And our coaches are holding them accountable to that and making sure that they are on top of all that stuff. And again, I just can't thank our parents enough, because they're the ones who are right there with them, and they can really see it and feel it. And so we're just using them, especially with some of those younger guys, to help us with this, because we clearly can't be right there. But we are trying to hold them accountable to all those things.
Thanks.
All right, next up is Doug Lesmerises from Cleveland.com with Tim May on deck.
Hey, Ryan. Food question. When you're at home working, have you found a go-to snack for yourself during this time? And how are you guys monitoring the nutritional aspect of this, obviously, with guys everywhere and maybe not having access to the kind of food you guys have at the Woody? What's that component for you guys?
No real go-to snack. However, I've got into the crock pot a little bit. It's pretty easy. You just throw some stuff in there in the morning, and then you put it on low, you let it cook all day, and then it's ready for dinner. So I kind of like to work the crock pot. In terms of our guys, we're actually able to send them some stuff. For certain guys, we're able to ship them out, whether it's protein mix or perishables. Actually have some frozen meals for the people who are local, and then able to for the guys who are in the dorms, we actually just recently are able to give them some money that typically they would be using for Buck ID locally to spend some money. We're able to give them that money so that they can go buy some things back home. So able to ship some food out when possible. We're able to give them some of those things, and then also we're able to give some of those guys some extra money.
And then just a big picture question, Ryan, and obviously nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody has answers. The most important thing is keeping people safe. But just how you feel about it as you've thought about things. Just what have you thought about the idea of we're back, we have a football season, there's a return to normalcy versus the idea of there is not football or football is delayed. Just, we don't know what's going to happen, but have you allowed your mind to wander in those two directions?
Not really. Just because I've done that in my past, and it's a lot of wasted stress for something that maybe isn't going to happen. And I try the best I can not to do that. Now, when it's appropriate, we need to forecast and plan for something, then I think we do that. But, there's just so many things that could happen, and you can just stress yourself out and worry about it when maybe it doesn't even happen. So certainly, pray and hope that this thing, starts to, flatten out soon, and we just solve it from there.
Thanks.
Up next, Tim May from Lettermen Row with Patrick Murphy on deck. Tim?
Yeah, Ryan, Al Washington said during the spring we got to talk to him that this is from a senior leadership or elder leadership as terms of guys leading younger players and also teaching them. This is absolutely the best situation he's ever been around, meaning Ohio State football. And I'm just wondering, why do you think that is, and how do you think that will help carry these guys through this stressful time?
I think it's going to be really good for us because, like you said, there's a lot of guys who've been in the program for several years who have played a lot of football. And I think when guys get in the program and get to play early on, it makes them grow up faster, that much faster. You look at a guy like Zach Harrison, came in last year, and look at all the reps he played. That forces you to grow up really fast. And when you take guys like, in Al's room, like Tuff Moreland or Pete Werner or Justin Hilliard, these are guys who played a lot of football here, who are great people, who come from great programs. And that's a big part of recruiting, certainly, is talent, but it's also the type of kids. And so, our aim is that, in situations like this or, when you go through tough times, you go through adversity, character shows. And that's a big part of who we're recruiting. And that's where, the families and the character of these kids got to really help us out in times like this. So, yeah, I think it does. I think in the end it's going to help us.
Hey, another quickie. Is there one film, video, show that you've gotten to, or a movie that you've gotten to watch over the last week or two that you would not have gotten a chance to, that you would recommend to others?
I watched that Tiger King the other day on Netflix. My wife and I binged it the last week. I got to tell you, that was very entertaining, to say the least.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Patrick Murphy from 24/7 Sports with Rob Aller on deck. Patrick?
Hey, Ryan, I know you guys didn't get nearly as much of spring practice as you would have wanted, but out of the handful of practices you did get, how much did you feel like you guys got out of it? What was accomplished there? Kind of give us a recap of those few practices you did manage to get.
I thought we got a lot in those three practices, but we were just getting started. So it's really hard to say. Certainly very disappointed we weren't able to get out there and develop the young guys, but then also enhance our scheme on both sides of the ball. So we're just going to have to do a great job of that this summer. But, again, the good news is there's a lot of guys out there that played a lot of football. The receiver position is probably the most inexperienced, and so we'll have to do a great job with that group. When you look across the board at almost every position, there's some experience and a bunch of guys who are veteran out there. So you could tell right from the first practice, it was almost like we picked up off a bowl practice. We were kind of rolling and practicing, and guys were executing on both sides of the ball at a fairly high level. Disappointed we weren't able to enhance the scheme and get the younger guys going. But, again, hopefully, somewhere along the line we're able to recoup some of that stuff.
Great. Thank you.
Next up is Rob Aller from the Dispatch with Bruce Hooley on deck. Rob?
Hey, Ryan. First unofficial question, what are you throwing in that crock pot? You can save that one. And really what I'm curious about is you talked about position groups, and I would think that some groups are more challenging than others to get really workouts in. I mean, I guess a kicker could go out to a field and kick, but the receiver group, line. What have you found, or have you found any group a little more challenging in the feedback with your assistants?
Yeah, chili is the one that I'm working on. I'm trying to work out the ingredients to get the best chili I can possibly get going. One was a good one. The other one was a complete failure. So I would say probably, like you said, the ones with the most room, they need to throw and catch, and just run in large distances are probably the biggest challenge in terms of that. For offensive linemen, though, when you don't have the equipment to punch bags and do those kind of things, that's a challenge. So they all kind of have their own challenges. But again, like let's say you're in inner city, New York City or wherever, and you're a wide receiver. There's not a lot of options for you to be running down, the middle of the street or whatever to try to work out. So those are the challenges we're trying to work through. I mean, if you're an offensive lineman and you don't have, bags to punch or sleds to push, that's a challenge. So, again, I think the coaches are doing an excellent job of being creative and trying to find different ways, but also, not, towing the line and making sure that we're keeping everybody safe.
Thank you. And a follow-up, I know you're taking it day by day, but working backward, let's say the season is delayed or whatever, what's the latest, how much time do you need as a program, and in talking to Mickey, how much time do you need as a program to get guys ready from a safety and a performance level, would you say?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number on that. That's a good question. There's probably some studies that need to be done on that. I think so much of that has to do with, what kind of shape are they in before we get into pads? I mean, do we have time with them before we start hitting? Or the first day we get them, they go into pads, with this acclimatization of getting them up and running. So I think there's a lot that goes into that. I think it's a great question. We're going to have to do a lot of studying on that. But again, there wasn't that that long ago that, guys reported to camp and we just got up and running. There was really no organized stuff in the summer. So I think if we get that far, that's going to be a conversation that we'll have to do a great job with.
Good luck with the chili, and thanks.
Okay, we've got time for two more questions. Next up, Bruce Hooley from Sports Illustrated Maven with Ari on deck. Bruce?
Ryan, I know one of the things you wanted to accomplish in the spring, our perception at least, was that you wanted to sort out backup quarterback. C.J. Stroud, Jack Miller had designs on that, obviously with Gunner there. But can you say whether C.J. and Jack have returned home? How much coaching can you do? How complicated is it, or how much does it complicate getting those guys up to where you wanted them to have them at the end of spring, given the circumstances you're operating under?
I was very impressed with how both of them came in and worked. Just their approach and the way they were able to take the offense to the field the first three practices. Again, of all the people, I'd say the receivers and those two quarterbacks are the ones that are going to really miss spring practice the most. But it is what it is, and we're going to have to do a great job, like you said, of getting them the film and letting them study. And there's nothing like taking reps, though. You can do a lot of that stuff and watch film and do that, and those guys will. And they'll do a great job, and Corey will do a great job with them, putting a plan together, throwing plan back home where they are. And, yes, they are back home, Jackson, Arizona, and CJ's out in L.A., but there's nothing like taking snaps. And so, the sooner we can get them under center again, the better off we're going to be.
This is a bit of a spin on Rob's question about how long it would take you to get guys ready. There's been some talk that the season may be shortened. I wonder, from your perspective as a coach, how long of a season do you need to feel like you're crowning a legitimate national champion? Is a 10-game season, which is what it was in 1969, the 10-game season adequate to you? And when do you get to the point, maybe on the calendar, where you feel like not enough time exists to play a season?
Yeah, I have not given that any thought. So I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, certainly before anything like that were ever to come up, I'm sure there'd be a lot of conversation between coaches and ADs, and I'm sure there's a lot of things at play there, a lot of ripple effects, and if we get that far, I'm sure that a lot of research, I'll probably have more of an idea of that if it comes up. But right now, I wouldn't say that I've given that really any thought. So I couldn't intelligently answer that right now.
Thank you.
All righty, we will anchor this call with Ari Wasserman from The Athletic. Ari?
Hey, thanks for getting me in, Jerry. Ryan, the recruiting calendar's sped up as it is, right, with, offers and things going out early. But with kids not being able to visit and, your time with them in person being completely diminished during this very important time, do you think there needs to be any reform in terms of the signing day and how things play out between December and January? Because if this thing goes for a few more months, you guys might only have 6 or 8 weeks to actually get kids on campus. And when it comes to, your guys' fit and what is good for them, it doesn't seem like it might be enough time.
Yeah, I think there definitely could be some reform in different areas. I don't think it needs to be drastic, but I do think that, based on when we're able to get people back on campus to visit, that, we should be able to at least, change a few things. We've lost a lot of time. February's dead. March is now dead. April, up until the 15th right now is dead. So, I think if we can kind of get visits up and going in May and June, I think we're okay. But if it keeps getting pushed back, then I think there should be a little bit of reform in terms of opening some things up for some more visits during the summer. Not to eat up the whole summer, but I do think that, guys need to come visit and come see what the campus is all about in recruiting. So, I would say that, we definitely need to look at all those things.
And one last thing, Ryan. I've been seeing online, and I don't know how possible this is in terms of just the execution of it, but I've seen schools trying to do virtual tours. I know that you guys are doing FaceTimes and talking to these kids all the time, but have you guys explored the potential of, spending a long period of time with individual recruits on the phone and taking them around campus in smaller groups for these virtual tours or anything like that?
Yeah, we were doing a lot of things like that. We're not really doing, we can't have somebody out on campus really, so it's hard for us to kind of organize all that in a short period of time. Most of the guys we've recruited have actually been on campus. They've seen it, not all of them, and so we're trying to do the best we can, and whatever questions they might have of answering those questions. But so many of them have actually, been on campus already because it just goes so far into their freshman, sophomore year. But yeah, FaceTime and sending them videos and things like that is something that can certainly help during this time. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Hey, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to everybody, I appreciate, all your guys' work and in this time, where people are kind of at their homes. I appreciate, just the work you guys do in giving, Buckeye Nation and the fans and everybody something to grab onto on a daily basis. And so really important and gives them something to look forward to every day. And I know there's not a lot to report, but certainly anything I can do to help or our staff can do to help during this time to have something for Buckeye Nation to grab onto.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.